You know, every single day you make a choice about what to wear. But have you ever really stopped to think about where that all comes from? I'm not talking about fleeting trends, but the fundamental act of putting on clothes itself. See, the story of clothing, it doesn't start with style, it begins with sheer survival.
So, why did we first start wearing clothes? I mean, it seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer? Wow, it takes us all the way back to the dawn of human ingenuity. It shows us how covering our bodies became one of the first and maybe most important technologies we ever invented. So, what was the big push?
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. We'll kick things off with the main theories. Then we're really going to zero in on the biggest driver, protection. We'll look at how we adapted to some crazy climates, check out the raw materials we used, and believe it or not, connect it all back to the jacket you might be wearing right now.
To get to the bottom of this big question, anthropologists and historians have been digging through everything. Prehistoric sites, ancient art, modern tribal customs, you name it. And what they've found is, well, it's not just one simple reason. Turns out there were a few really compelling drivers that got humanity to start getting dressed.
Yeah, it basically boils down to four main ideas. First up, you've got protection, just basic shelter from the elements. Then there's ritual, this idea that clothes could give you special powers or, ward off evil spirits. After that comes identification, using what you wear to show your status, your rank, or what tribe you belong to. And finally, adornment, which is really just that basic human desire to decorate ourselves and, let's be honest, look good.
And look, that desire to look good, adornment, it's ancient. I mean, just check out this Bronze Age necklace. It's beautiful. But as fundamental as beauty and status are to us, they probably came second. The real story, the first story of clothing, begins with a much more urgent need, just plain survival.
And that right there brings us to the absolute core of our story, the protection principle. This is the big theory, the idea that the first clothes weren't fashion statements at all. Nope, they were tools. You could even argue they were humanity's first piece of personal tech, designed for one simple purpose: to keep our kind of fragile bodies safe in a pretty hostile world.
So here's the crucial point. Before clothing was about style or status or anything else, it was a shield. It was a portable shelter against biting cold, blistering sun, thorns, and nasty insects. I mean, think about it. For early humans venturing out of Africa into these new, way harsher climates, figuring this out wasn't a nice to have. It was absolutely essential for survival.
Okay, and this is where human ingenuity just really starts to shine. We didn't just invent one type of clothing and call it a day. Oh no. We engineered specific, tailored solutions for totally different environments. You can see this so clearly when you compare two complete extremes, the freezing cold of the Arctic and the scorching heat of the Sahara.
It's just fascinating when you put these two strategies side by side. In the cold, the game is all about trapping your body heat, so you use tight-fitting layers. But in the heat, it's the exact opposite. You want to protect yourself from the sun, sure, but you also need air to circulate. So loose, flowing robes are the way to go. Two problems, two totally brilliant and completely opposite solution.
All right, let's dive into the Arctic for a second. The fur garments created by the Inuit, they were masterpieces of thermal engineering. Seriously, they used these multiple perfectly fitted layers to create little pockets of air that would get warmed up by the body. And this system was so incredibly effective that when European explorers showed up, they often just ditched their own gear and adopted local designs, like the fur-lined parka we all know today.
Now, let's jump over to the Sahara. The Tuareg people there absolutely perfected clothing for extreme heat. Their long, loose robes and head coverings, made of light cotton, are just brilliant. They do so many things at once. They block the brutal sun, help prevent dehydration, and can be wrapped to protect your mouth and nose from dust and sandstorms. It's a perfect illustration of how clothing is a direct, ingenious response to environmental challenges.
Okay, so humans figured out the designs, but what did they make them from? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Whatever they could find. This was not about importing the finest silks. This was about using nature's own toolkit with some incredible resourcefulness. Animal hide was, of course, one of the first go-to materials, and the process they invented to turn it into leather, that was a massive technological leap. They'd have to scrape the hides clean, and then to soften them, they'd rub them with fat, or, and you gotta love this, they would literally chew on them. Then they'd stitch the pieces together using sharpened bones for needles and tough animal tendons for thread. For the time, this was absolute high-tech stuff.
And it wasn't just leather either. Different cultures all over the world found these unique solutions right in their own backyards. You had the Ainu people in Japan using fish skins to make waterproof gear. Pretty smart, right?
On the super rainy northwest coast of Canada, people wove rain capes out of shredded cedar bark. And in really wet tropical climates, they figured out that using bark fiber was actually way better than animal skin because it dried so much faster.
So whether you're talking about the frozen tundra or a humid jungle, the story is pretty much the same. Clothing started as an answer to a problem. It was all about protection, adaptation, and survival. It's funny, today we think of our clothes in terms of brands and what's trendy, but their deepest, oldest roots lie in this incredible ancient legacy of human ingenuity.
Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The next time you zip up a fancy, high-tech jacket, one that's waterproof, wind-resistant, the whole deal, just take a second. Ask yourself, what are you really wearing? Is it just a piece of fashion? Or are you carrying on a tradition that started tens of thousands of years ago with a scraped animal hide or a woven cape of cedar bark, a tradition of humans using technology to survive?